And welcome. Yes, I'm back. It's time for 13 and a 1, and I'm your host, Francis Feltry. I know you missed me. We were doing unusual shows during the holiday season and a little thematic. Now we're kind of getting back into the regular 2021 frame of mind. And with that, I just want to let you know that comments are appreciated, but even more so, subscribe. Hitting the subscribe button, very, very appreciated. With all that, our intro music was by Charles Fleming. And now let's get to our important stuff. Our guest for today's episode, our guest, Marc Ryser. Marc, hey, thanks for being on the show. I appreciate it. It was
Am I the first show of 2021?
you will be the first show shot in 2021. You will be the second show that appears in 2021.
Well, then I'm halfway honored.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, technically honored. Technically. So, Marc, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about what you're doing, and anything you'd like us to know, first of all, before we start playing the game.
Sure. Real life Marc Ryser is a 25-year veteran of the public school system. I'm an art teacher in Highland, Indiana. That's what I do so I can live, and I enjoy it. Teaching has gotten a lot harder recently, but teaching is still a good thing to do. Besides teaching, I enjoy a lot of different things. I'm a musician, I'm an improviser, I do a lot of design work in theater in the area, although, again, not for the last year and a half or so. Just starting to experiment with the idea of Zoom theater and similar sorts of work. And we've got a show coming up. I'm a member of an ensemble called JKL Improv. We will be starting our shows, improvisations on a theme, the theme of creativity, which we'll be discussing on Thursday nights in January through Improductions. So
the shows will be on Thursday nights?
Thursday nights, yes.
And you'll be able to see it on Improductions' website, their Facebook page.
And probably Twitch as well, but yes, all of those things.
Okay, great.
And then we'll, of course, record them and throw them on YouTube.
Yeah, that's the YouTube, the great suppository of information.
It's the way that every person on Earth gets to say, "Look at me, I'm a publisher."
Right, exactly. So, one of the things you do is you're an artist.
Yes.
And I've seen some of your work because it's really good. Let me just ask this. We're going to go start with some of the easy questions. First question to you is, as an artist, what medium do you prefer to work in?
By training, I am a graphic designer.
Okay.
So I really enjoy the idea of the computer is what I do most of my work with. But like almost every artist in the world, I started as a young child with pencils. And so I have more fluency and more technical precision with pencils than I have other media. The ones I really don't like are the ones that I have to let do what they're going to do instead of what I want them to do.
Okay.
So watercolor is not my friend. So I generally prefer the things where I get to control the media more than have to let the media do what it's going to do.
Okay. Fair enough. So you're not working in sheet metal, or you're not one of those what I find artists where I'll go through a garbage can and build something.
As an art teacher, I've done some of all of those things with students in various classes over the years, including found object sculptures.
There you go. All right. See, that to me is like fun and also disgusting at the same time. So maybe that tells you a little bit about me. So anyway, so you've done that. That's your medium. Now, I know that one of the things as an artist and also to kind of, you're an IU fan, so you like college football or college sports, especially IU. But what is your favorite college sport logo? This question for you.
Wow, that's an interesting question.
I used to like the Rebels from that beat IU, but they got rid of that, didn't they?
I don't know, honestly. Logo type design is an interesting thing. And college logos generally aren't very good
Mm.
because they don't have to be.
Right.
Northwestern's got a kind of stylized squared off N.
Yeah.
IU is an IU. Purdue is a P. Uh, they don't have to be all that great. Some
Mm-hmm.
of the things that really happen, interesting wise, though, are things that happen as secondary logos. Purdue has a logo that ends up printed on most of its materials, and it's a griffin with a shield canted at an angle with Purdue University
Mm-hmm.
around it. That's actually a really cool design,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but it's not one that shows up in publicity all that often.
Hmm. I was going to ask you that literally one of my questions is going to be about secondary logos. And I was
Okay.
like, I don't really know a lot of people who pay attention to secondary logos. And then I was even trying to think of an example, and the only one that would pop to mind first was the Florida Panthers on their professional hockey team. On their shoulder have a shoulder patch that is a palm tree, I believe, and a hockey stick. And so I'd count that as a secondary logo or some sort. And so that's just interesting that you brought that up. So would that be your favorite sports logo then? The
No, it's not a sports logo at all. I don't think it's like
just a logo.
it's the university press, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
College sport logo.
Could be any logo, really. I was just picking out a.
Oh, so it doesn't have to be college or
Ah, it said.
okay.
Yeah, it could be any logo.
Um,
Because there are some boring professional football logos, like the Cleveland Browns. The Pittsburgh Steelers just basically stole the industrial symbol for steel. I mean,
right.
the Bears are just a C. Not even like really kind of cool looking. It's just, and sometimes they put that bear head on it, but they don't wear it on their chest or anything. But I mean, but an official logo is fine. Anything, professional is fine.
The I don't think they use this one anymore either. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the orange guy with the knife.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Says right.
Yeah.
It,
Well, it was one of those like he was a cavalier looking kind of guy with the one side up, right? Of his
okay.
maybe.
Yeah, that's right. So that was always
There
interesting.
should be one with the fez though. I think that'd be cool. So you like that one?
I do. Um, any logo can get updated and modernized also.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not only just what it is, but how you design it.
Sure, sure.
On social media, occasionally you see something like every NFL helmet redesigned.
Redesigned as a member of the Zodiac, and then they're like, yeah, and but there's the teams, the Browns, they really can't do anything. The Steelers, they can't do anything because and the Packers. What is I mean, is that somebody at a Amazon? What is a Packer?
The Packers were the nation's first professional football team.
Sure.
And they were sponsored by Acme Meat Packers.
Ah, I didn't know that.
Literally where the name comes from.
So there you go. So Amazon should take that over and for their Packers, the Amazon Packers at the Amazon.
Maybe a WNBA team.
Yeah.
Amazons.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I think that you could have a bunch of different. That would. I think that as long as there's not an Amazon 84, as long as there's not an Amazon 84, then we're good.
We could do a whole show on how terrible that was.
Yeah, that was terrible. And speaking of movies, though, I think you could. I think right now you can't trip over a bad review of Wonder Woman 84. But speaking of movies, let's go and make this a little bit more. They're going to up it to 11. And
Wait, question 11 already?
No. We're on question 3, but we're going to raise the difficulty level to 11. We're going to go to 11. Spinal Tap. That's a little reference. Spinal Tap. So we were talking before we went on about Final Countdown, which is one of it's not like my favorite movie. It's not even in my top 10, but it's in my top like 30 or 40. I like that movie. And the theory was, and this is spoiler alert. somewhat, I guess.
If you're
And
going to spoil a movie that was released in the mid '80s, people aren't going to
do
want
you even need a spoiler alert for that? Really? I mean, aren't we? We are just a little bit too, as a society, concerned about offending people. But I'll throw it up anyway. Spoiler alert. Um, in Final Countdown, a 1984 U.S. aircraft carrier, the
to.
Nimitz, the Nimitz, ends up going back in time to December 6th, 1941. This movie stars Martin Sheen. He plays a reporter or a news person. The captain is Kirk Douglas. The captain of the ship is Kirk Douglas, if I recall.
Air commander, I think.
Yeah, but
Commander of the
he's making the decisions. And so anyway, they end up going back in time, and they have this dilemma. They're a U.S. ship. They know what the future holds, insofar as there'll be 4 aircraft carriers that are going to attack Pearl Harbor in matter of hours. So what do? Do they basically change history or not? So, Mark, let's assuming that we're not going to talk about the movie. So that's your premise.
Okay.
You
I
are
get to
now
say
the captain of the aircraft carrier, the USS Nimitz from 1985, that is now in 1941. And you have a decision. Do you basically get involved in World War II, stopping Pearl Harbor, maybe not stopping Pearl Harbor, but then assisting the U.S. government in fighting the Japanese with advanced weaponry that is 30, 40 years ahead of anything anybody has. I mean, there's a few interesting fight scenes that are really cool in the movie like that. So what would you do in that scenario?
So there are two answers to this question,
Sure, there are always at least 2 answers.
and so the great science fiction philosophical discussion of, do you risk one timeline that you already know to to fix something that you think or consider to be wrong? Uh, and that's one answer.
Yeah.
The other answer is the one that I'm going to go with in this case, because you set up the scenario for me. I am the commander of the USS Nimitz on December 6th, 1941, with certain knowledge of where the Japanese fleet is.
Right.
I have taken an oath as a U.S. naval officer to defend the United States and the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. I absolutely blow the Japanese Navy out of the water.
Would you? I mean, the thing is, would you wait until they attack,
No,
or would you do a preemptive strike?
they would never launch the attack on Pearl Harbor if I was commander of a U.S. aircraft carrier, and I knew it at that time because
Okay.
of the oath that I have taken.
Okay. So, now next thing is, say you stop that attack. Would you then pull into port and and still follow orders from President Roosevelt, or would you would you feel obligated to hide the ship so it doesn't alter the? I mean, you've already altered the timeline.
Absolutely.
So,
The
what
attack
do
on
you
Pearl
do?
Harbor did not happen. The timeline will not unfurl the same way that it did.
Right.
And as a naval officer, of course, I pull into port and say, "Mr. President, this is the USS Nimitz."
Hmm.
Actually, it'd be interesting to talk, since it would be just after December 7th. Husband Kimmel would not have been relieved of
Right.
command, and say, "Admiral Kimmel, this is named after Admiral Nimitz,
Yeah.
your predecessor."
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And who's in Washington D.C., I believe at that point.
Right, some guy you've never heard of yet because he
Right.
hasn't taken command yet.
Right. Right. So yeah. So I think that if I were in that situation, I would probably let the attack start, and then, because again I have advanced weaponry, I probably could, so that the intentions of the Japanese are known for sure. Then I would have done everything you've just said. I would have let the attack begin. But that's neither here nor there, because that was we neither of us were there, and So that's final countdown. See, one of my next question is going to be, and this is question number 4, I believe. What is your favorite movie and why?
Wow, I've seen a lot of movies over the last 50 years. Um, as a child, we're approximately the same age.
Sure, approximately.
I would imagine that you had similar sorts of experiences growing up as I did.
Sure.
Um, so the a movie that made the biggest impact on me as a child was Star Wars.
Sure. Sure.
And I was only, I guess I was 8 when the movie came out. I was 9 by the time I saw it for the first time
Right.
because my parents were not going to take me to lines around the block as a 8-year-old kid.
Well, that means what was it? 77 when Star Wars came out, or 76?
77 is, I think, when it premiered.
Mm,
78 is when I managed to see it,
okay. Okay.
because it was in the theaters a tremendously long time.
Right. I mean, it was also, just for people who might be interested. The time was a little different. It wasn't it wasn't like what would be 2 years ago now, or a year and a half ago, where there were a lot of multiplex choices. A
Mhm.
lot of movie theaters may have had 2 or 3 theaters tops.
Sure.
So there wasn't a lot of these 6, 8 theater choices. So, and there just weren't as many theaters, at least in my recollection of the time, unless you had to travel to go somewhere. So a movie like Star Wars was so popular that and there's the opportunity to see, and it was not in as many theaters, so you would have to wait in line to see it. And that wasn't it was, I would say, uncommon for a movie to have lines like that. But that was then it got into the time frame where a lot of movies had lines. There was no advanced ticket sales, or there just weren't as many theaters. So I even saw, like, Independence Day. I waited in line to see that. So
I think as I was a high school student, I waited in line for Batman,
sure,
what,
sure.
1986, 87,
Hmm.
um, and then Star Wars. Um, but I can't remember ever waiting in line for a movie other than those two.
Mm. I think I waited in line for. I think it might have also been. I was in a small town where I was going to college at the time to see, I think, the third Indiana Jones movie. I think I had to wait in line to see the first Indiana Jones movie. But again, when we're talking lines, you're pretty much talking a line that basically was for that show. It wouldn't be like, I'm going to wait 4 hours. It was
Mhm.
usually like a 2 hour wait tops, because they weren't pre-selling tickets.
Mhm.
So you got in line if you saw, like, well, I don't know if I'll get in. I'll go another time. So so it was different. So Star Wars was your favorite movie, and
Growing up as a kid, absolutely.
is that because, I mean, there's nothing like it before that movie for any. I mean, even for a historical movie person, nothing was like. I mean, the story is pretty basic,
Oh,
but
sure. The story is a samurai movie.
right, but but it's like everything else that goes in it, the backstory, the galaxy, the universe itself
Mhm.
was different. So as a kid, did you ever like I would sometimes fantasize, like, what if I was in, like, or what if I wrote the sequel to that movie? Did you ever think of like a sequel to Star Wars, like if you could create that? That's question
Sure.
number 5.
You owned all the little figures, right?
Sure, absolutely. I had the mail away first. There was a special because they weren't ready for the
Right.
Star Wars and the big, but George Lucas was smart. Everybody knows this. He when he made the deal with, I think it was 20th Century Fox, he kept the merchandising rights. They're like, well, yeah, no, because nobody did anything with that then, and
Who cares? Nobody's going to buy these toys.
yeah, who cares? And so anyway, so he kept it, and so they didn't realize how popular it was going to be, And so there was like a way you could get special advanced characters, a set of four. It was R2D2, Han Solo, Darth Vader, and I think Luke Skywalker in a set.
Mhm.
And that's I or I was there, man, right there early on. So did you ever have any theory on what would be Star Wars 2? We didn't know Empire Strikes Back was coming.
Right. Um, what you're asking about imagination of a child from
Well, or even later on, you could skip ahead and pretend that was your child. That was your imagination as a child. I don't care.
um,
I won't check.
so did the question is, did I imagine a sequel to Star Wars?
Yes.
Uh, Frequently I did. You pulled out the toys
Yeah, sure.
and you built a Death Star before the Death Star existed as a playset that you could get. My Death Star was probably a early to mid '70s tape cassette holder. It was blue, and it was about 2 feet by 2 feet, and it had all these slots on it. But you could open the lid up, and there was a hole inside.
Mm-hmm.
And I took Legos and I built Stilton between it, so you could get into the various pieces and stuff. So that was my Death Star growing up. Um, I didn't think that they would bring back the Death Star again. I didn't think that that would
Right.
return.
Sure.
I thought that there would be a bigger ship. There was in the second episode, uh, the giant Star Destroyer.
Right, which was really cool too. I thought the ships were cool.
Um, I got to tell you, the idea of Luke, I am your father, didn't surprise me at all.
Oh, really? That
Nope.
that surprised me.
I watched a lot of B martial arts movies growing up,
Ah, I see.
and while I didn't, as a 9 or 10-year-old kid, sit there and think, "Hey, George Lucas has ripped off Akira Kurosawa all over the place,"
Mm,
the tropes that were being used felt very, very similar.
mm.
Well, of course he's your father. How else can we have that particular relationship?
Sure.
Um, so those types of things were part of what I was going with. Um, I created. You ever have Legos?
Sure, absolutely.
I figured out how to build X-wings and TIE fighters,
Well,
and then
you were
because
much. I could never do anything like that with my Legos.
I spent a lot of time, and then the Y-wings were in the first movie, but they didn't talk about them as Y-wings.
Right.
That came out sometime later.
Right.
So I said, well, if there are X-wings, there got to be Y-wings.
Right.
So I built
Ah,
that,
I see. Okay.
and I said, well, if they're Y-wings, there got to be Z-wings. And
Hmm.
I couldn't build it, but I drew it, and I thought that looks stupid, and threw it away. And I've seen very similar ships in science fiction since.
Okay. Okay. Would Z-wing? Well, that's just kind of interesting. Now I think that everybody loves. I mean, I think Empire Strikes Back. This is question number 7, by the way. Uh, Empire Strikes Back, everybody would admit, is a successful sequel. One of those rare, successful, better than the original
Mhm.
sequel. Now, I was very disappointed in the Return of the Jedi, especially the end. I've sort of liked it more now, but I don't think I liked it as much when I first saw it. I personally would get rid of the Ewoks. I
Yep.
think originally they were going to be Wookiees, and they decided to make them cute and fuzzy. I don't know. I don't probably read something like that, but at this point, there's like so much information that I don't even know what's true anymore when it comes to things like that, because people are just trying to get clicks on Facebook. So I don't know.
25 secrets about the actors on the set that you didn't know.
And then it takes me 2 or 3 hours to try to find one secret, because I have to and then hit continue. And the next thing you know, I'm looking at some ad for weight loss items. So
The,
forget it.
the secret for those things is don't click on them.
No, I don't. My spirit name, my Indian guide name, used to be clickbait, but now I don't do those anymore. I know they're trying. It's a falsehood. I know.
Mhm.
So what would you have changed about that movie? Is there any movie in Star Wars since? I pick the Ewok one, but is there any movie you would change the ending
Sure. I would take the name Star Wars and freeze it in carbonite after the first three movies were done.
to?
I watched all the prequels
Okay, sure. Yeah, right.
and I was like, okay, um, yeah, I'm not a kid anymore. They don't feel the same way.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they spent more time on more adult sorts of things. Um, Living, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, seeing Palpatine become the emperor through political machinations was sort of interesting. It's a little on the nose for 2020. Um, so I'm not sure they worked all that well.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of a trade federation being the enemy because they want economic markets. Okay, it works. But then I saw The Force Awakens and I said, "Wow, this is Episode 4 all over again."
Yes.
And then they kept doing that,
Hmm.
and I was like, "Who cares?" And I literally have not watched another one.
Okay.
I haven't seen them in the theaters. They come on television, and I go, "I can read a book."
Yeah.
I just it ruined it.
Which one ruined it? Four?
The
The one you called four. I mean,
Well,
be
4 was A New Hope. That
right,
was the first movie we saw in the
right.
70s.
So then four, five, six. So you're saying seven?
Yes.
Yes. And I,
4 and 3 were not good,
yeah.
but 7 was, hey, let's try to pretend that stuff never happened and
Right.
do it again.
Well,
That
and then
happens a lot with movies, though.
yeah.
Sequels are rarely better. You mentioned that already. I think the maybe best example of a sequel that is better than its original is The Wrath of Khan.
Mm. Or Godfather two. One of
Do you,
those.
do you actually think that?
Yeah, I do. I do.
Okay.
I do. I do. But I enjoy watching both Godfather films. Don't get me wrong. It's a little cultural for me. I know. I don't count the third one.
See, there you go.
Yeah, right. That's why there's only two.
But then
I hate the third one. The third one is horrible.
do you ever see the Highlander movie?
Yes.
So they had Highlander, which was a
Awesome.
really cool movie. Definitely a cult sort of following. It's never been really mainstream.
Right.
And then they came out with the second one where Sean Connery was really an alien and he wasn't really killed. And the prize had never actually been given.
Right.
And it was called Highlander 2.
Right.
And then they came out with the third Highlander movie, which did not have a 3 after it.
Mm-hmm.
So Highlander,
The quickening,
and then,
the awakening.
yeah, they just dropped the numbers
Yeah.
in an attempt to say 2 didn't happen. Like, no, it happened. You made it. I watched it.
Yeah. And then we did a TV series.
Mm-hmm.
Which had nothing. I mean, it's that Friday the 13th theory of let's make a TV series. Which I don't know if you recall the Friday the 13th the series.
I remember it. I never watched it.
It had nothing to do with Friday the 13th slasher movies. It was these three people who were tracking down curio items who had somehow gotten out, and they were all haunted or they were all bewitched, these items, and they tried to collect them back, and obviously every time something. But like you said, then they had Highlander had a series that had nothing to do. I don't even know why you would need to even call it Highlander.
Well, because they already had a producer and they had a connection to the name. So,
Right.
and the TV program was okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then they connected the movies to the TV program for a final movie.
I didn't know that. Was it a TV movie or was it a movie?
A movie came out in the theaters. And it was called
Really?
Highlander Endgame.
Wow. Yikes! I might have to check that out. So we digress, though. So in regard to your favorite movie, you said it was Star Wars, and what ending would you change in any of those Star Wars movies to maybe make it more interesting or to maybe fit a little bit better? Like I would get rid of the midichlorians. I think that's where the train fell off the tracks for me.
When the Jedi religion stops being a religion and becomes just you were born that way.
Yeah, kind of something like that. Like I'd always hoped to be a Jedi, and then I like found out I probably couldn't because I
Sure, every kid hopes to be a wizard or a superhero or
right.
something, and anything so that they can say I'm special.
Right. It's sort of the theory of Batman and Robin. Kids, I don't know who was that. Maybe it was younger kids who maybe like were 8, 9 would like Robin, but preteens like the target audience, your 12 to 13-year-old would probably wouldn't like Robin because he was their contemporary and they could never be Robin, but they could hopefully be Batman.
Well, I think the entire concept of the comic book sidekick was introduced into comic books in the 40s and 50s when, well, the 50s really, when the the kids needed a reason to buy comic books. It was a marketing strategy to introduce Robin and et cetera, Bucky Barnes for Captain America.
Sure.
They were an
Yeah.
attempt to say, look, kids, there's somebody like you who's going to eventually be a superhero. You can aspire to this.
Mhm.
So it was nothing more than marketing. Think about how bad a human being will go with Batman. A wealthy person has control of a huge multinational corporation, has all the money in the world, and he feels bad about Robin losing his parents. So he doesn't get him adopted. He sets him up in tights and says, "Come with me, kid. Let's fight evil."
Yeah, come into my nightmare.
Yeah. I
Come
mean,
into my like the thing I can't it's my parents were killed like 15 years ago and I still can't get over it. I'm still seeking out vengeance, but I'm not killing anybody.
right.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean
Well, I mean, if you look at the history of comic books, Batman was the Dark Knight.
mhm.
The Dark Knight in the 1940s was dark.
Well, he had a gun originally.
Yeah, two of them, right? I think.
I don't remember,
Yeah,
but yeah, I know he had a gun.
he shot street criminals to death.
Mhm.
That's what he did. Then we get the 60s,
Yeah.
and hey, now you wear lavender and dance the Batusi.
Right.
Um,
There was a reaction to that though in the late '60s, early '70s, which would be the Neil Adams Batman, which is when characters like Ra's al Ghul was created and Man Bat, and so there was definitely a movement towards I don't know if more real is the word, but sort of a more or a darker Knight, but really didn't become the Dark Knight until Frank Miller did his The Dark Knight Returns. That's when, but that was also a reaction to some things that had been happening earlier with characters like the Punisher from the '70s and the '80s.
all art changes with the society that creates it,
Sure.
and all art changes as a reaction to what has come before. Those same things happen in painting. Those same things happen in filmmaking. Those same things happen in theater.
Well, let me go
So
with question number 8 then. I know we kind of, but question number 8 was
segue.
where do you see art and film going based upon a reflection of society the way it is now, and where what would you project? And again, it's an opinion; it's not like a science. So,
good, because you're asking me to predict the future.
well, yeah. I mean, if you were like John Hogue, I would say I want accurate predictions, but he's
So
yeah. Go ahead.
where do you think we are right now before I can answer where are we going?
That's a good point. That's a good point. I think we are in a post apocalyptic. No, we no. I think if you look at where society is now, I think it is definitely it's a very split society, and so I don't think there's a lot of consensus I don't think that there's a lot of understanding or willingness to understand. So you have a very, uh, desperate society that, I mean, is, so I think that it's, if you look at, just as an example, I'm trying to balance this because that's a good question. Um, you have movies in the 30s that were escapist. They weren't really a reflection of society. They were uh, almost like a mirror that made it look prettier.
Okay.
It was like, I'm gonna go to this movie and I'm gonna watch, Ginger Rogers sing about, uh, you know, we're in the money. And so
Wasn't good
now I
enough.
think what you see is, I think society is so negative that a film has to almost reflect the negatives, has to be worse than society is. So it's almost like people will go, I mean, they're going to go see The Purge now, as opposed to going to see something that's uplifting. I mean, I don't think you're going to see a return of musicals unless it's musicals about revenge killing. you know,
Sweeney Todd.
sure. And so probably that needs to be remade right now. But just trying to look at that. So I would say society right now is definitely very dark, is a very cynical, very mistrusting of authority, very individualistic. So with that, so where would you say that? Where would the projection be, or where would you say where you see art now and where you see it in the next 20 years? Then we're talking mostly cinema.
All right. So basically, I'm going to say that our society right now, and I wasn't alive in the 60s. I certainly don't remember it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think our society now, in a lot of ways, reflects late 50s, early 60s America in societal division.
Okay.
You know, with the protests over George Floyd's death and similar situations, it kind of feels to me like we are in that second or third major round of the civil rights movement.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we see that sort of division between every group that we can name, political right, political left, uh, black, white, minority, majority. And it doesn't really matter. We're so used to thinking in terms of opposites that Americans have been conditioned to the idea that the opposite of a cat is a dog,
Sure.
when it's not. It's a completely separate animal. But we kind of think that way.
Mm-hmm.
So where are we going? We're either heading toward the cultural Armageddon that everybody always sort of suspects the next generation will bring about,
Mm-hmm.
or we're heading toward actually starting to make progress and start to fix things. I think we're heading into over the next 20 years, I think we'll head into a new idea or a new version of futurism.
You mean like in the like Mad Max sort of futurism, or like as in the 1930s, 1920s, 30s? Uh, you know, future is bright.
Yes, that. Um, the I'll go to television for a second. The Gene Roddenberry's original Star Trek came out in the late 60s.
Sure.
Um, Star Wars came out late 70s. That's a reaction to one another. That's a different society's version of what's happening at that time.
Or it wouldn't resonate. I mean, there's certain things. I think it resonates because it is a reaction.
Right.
There were other sci-fi movies in the 60s and 70s some of which they don't resonate, so they're lost in the dust. I'm not saying that Battlestar Galactica, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about some bad sci-fi that was out there in this, but they don't work necessarily because they don't really reflect society at the time.
So I think we're heading into a neo-futurism. In art, futurism was the idea in the 20s, the time between the world wars, that said technology can fix things. That the cities will be our bright new future. It turned out that was wrong. Technology causes problems too, but our ability to adapt as a human species to what is the way it's going to be, we're going to find a way to live with it. Art will reflect, and whether it's painting and sculpture or theater or music, whatever, art will reflect the idea that we are moving forward towards something that's positive. Mm-hmm. That's my guess over the next 20 years.
Mm-hmm. And do you, when you see something like Star Wars, let's just say again, I think they try, good sci-fi especially reflects the society it's in, and when you see something that's would you say that some kind of good sci-fi future would be more of a positive as opposed to what maybe had been the Mad Max negative 80s sci-fi? Everything was like post-apocalyptic. Not that there didn't exist in the 50s as well. There's a lot of fear of
post-apocalyptic has been a genre that has been around for a long, long, long time.
Sure, fair enough.
Every generation.
Sure.
What are these kids doing today? Well, they've been saying that for 100 years.
Right.
Turn that noise down. At some point, people were looking at big band music. Turn that noise down. And kids today listen to what's all this? Who cares?
Right. Well, even you can go back 1,000 years when the years switched to the year 1000. I think people were very fearful that was the end of the world. Or early Christians thought that the end of the world was coming next week. They thought Jesus was coming right back. So there've been definitely that the fear of the end is not something new.
No.
So that's absolutely true. So okay. So now we're getting a little heavy here.
Yeah, are we having fun or not?
We are. I'm having fun. I'm having fun.
I hope you, the audience, are also having fun.
Yeah, the three people that'll watch this: Lori, Jill, and Lori's mom. So now you've done some acting as well. So
I've done some, yes.
Well, I don't. It's like always when I'm at a party, and let's say you meet somebody, you're in a social gathering of some sort. This is not your question. I'm just saying that I hate when people say, "What do you do for a living?" Because that's not who I mean. I just say, "How what would you like me to know about you?" Or "How do you define yourself?" I don't care. If I'm ever, I just don't. I don't. I just don't feel that. But anyway, what I'm asking you is, you've done some theater. What is a show you've appeared in that you've enjoyed, and what is your favorite role that you've ever done? And you don't have to pick one. If there's a few, feel free.
Okay, so I only do shows that I want to do. There are a lot of community theater actors who are in show after show after show.
Addicts.
Or that's what they have to do, right?
Sure. It's a social thing.
Right. I work so that I can act. That's not me. I only do shows that I want to do. Mm-hmm. And for me, the role that got me into acting was Cyrano de Bergerac.
Okay.
I read that play in high school. Mm-hmm. And when I read that play, it called to me. Mm-hmm. And then I read it again and did the fight choreography for a high school production of it when I was in college. Mm-hmm. And then I did it again as an adult. and played the role of Cyrano. And so I really read that play 3 different times
Mm.
and really delved into it 3 different times. And I was constantly struck by how different my interpretation of that play, of that show was when I read it each time.
Mm.
There's a line in the play where Cyrano is confronted by the primary bad guy of the play, the Count de Guiche. Um, they are both French, both nobles. Um, Cyrano's minor aristocracy, the Count is a count, and he wants him to join his following. And he says, "Have you ever read Don Quixote?" And Cyrano's response is, "I have, and found myself the hero." So he reads Don Quixote and he sees himself in the role. In high school, that's the way I felt.
Mm.
I am Cyrano. I'm a good guy. Why don't people see it? I've
Mm.
got all these problems that are very obvious, and they stood in my way. And I read it as an adult and thought, this guy's a tragic hero because he cannot see that he is in his own way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's his problems. It's his mental instability that keeps him from being the hero of the story because he's not. So that's a role that I felt if I don't audition for this, because I came into it even in community theater as an adult, I came into it as the fight coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to teach him how to fight with swords and make it look good. I wasn't going to be in it. And after a couple of nights of auditions, I turned to the directors and said, "Would it cause you any problems if I auditioned?" So I
Right.
did, and that was my first role in community theater.
Okay. Now, question number 10 is staying with that theme is are there any roles that you want to do that you haven't yet? Is there anything that you're like, oh, well, if that show comes up, I definitely want to audition for that part?
Um, I think I don't have a specific
Mm-hmm.
answer to that question. Like I can't say I really want to do this one. I think the problem is I came to acting awfully late
Mm-hmm.
and have therefore missed an opportunity to play a lot of characters.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Uh, Gary Shakespeare did Hamlet a couple of years ago, a couple of summers ago,
Mm-hmm.
and there's some really good stuff in Hamlet.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Um, the To Be or Not to Be is a great monologue,
Sure it is.
and it's one that can be read many different ways. And the problem is I can't be Hamlet because Hamlet is 17, 18 years old, and I was in my late 40s. So I think that's a problem that I face if I go back to the idea of community theater after the pandemic is over. I'm now 50,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of changes or alters the way I think of myself. So
Yeah, no, yeah, that's the problem. With acting is as you age, you have to be realistic, and that's the hard part about acting. I think one of the things that's hard is being realistic about your capabilities and what you can do. I mean, um, you know, I think that. Somebody was saying to me that about Brad Pitt. He's a leading man. He is a character actor in a leading man's body. So it's sort of you can be lucky like that, or you can be like me and just basically the most you can strive for is being a character actor. So I think that it's what made you said you got started late. Question number 11 in acting. What made what? Why did you? What gave you the bug? I mean, I know that you did Cyrano de Bergerac, but what how did that manifest later? What was it that made you kind of say, hey, I kind of like this?
um, specifically in theater,
Yeah.
The opportunities presented themselves
Okay.
far later than they typically do.
Okay.
And I was probably 42, 43 years old
Mm.
when I said, or when I really discovered the opportunity. A community theater was doing Cyrano. A friend of mine said, "Hey, they're doing this. They could potentially use a fight coordinator."
Hmm.
I've
Well,
been,
do you
I've been,
have fight training background, or?
I fenced for close to 30 years.
I see. I see. So,
So as a fight coordinator, no. As a fencer, yeah.
okay. Okay.
All of my all of my fight choreography is basically either self-taught or read from books. Going, all right, how do I simulate violence with an audience member sitting right there?
Right.
Oh well, I can't stab them on this side because the audience will see it. It has to be on that side.
Right.
So that's how I got into theater.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but why did I never do that? In
Mm.
high school, I was into music. I was
Okay.
a saxophone player. I was in jazz band. I was in pit orchestra. I played in every ensemble that you could play in.
Mm-hmm.
So until my senior year of high school, I didn't do a play or a musical because I was always in the pit,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I didn't feel like I was missing anything.
Right.
And then when I started teaching, my first year teaching, I started building sets for the theater,
Mm-hmm.
and I started playing in the pits. So again, I'm right there when that show is going on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just doing this
You're
instead
different
of
role.
something else.
Mm.
Over the last 10 years or so, I've done nearly everything else that you can do in a theater to some degree or the other. But I haven't played in a lot of pits because I'm doing something else now.
Mm-hmm. Now, with your musical background, is there any? Is question number 12. Is there any instrument you like playing, or how many instruments do you play, and a little bit about your music?
I
Uh,
am primarily a saxophonist,
mm,
um, which means I can play all saxophones at least to some degree.
mm-hmm.
I have experience on soprano, alto, tenor, baritone, and bass saxophones. Uh, Most of that time is on bari in jazz bands. So five saxophones, two altos, two tenors, and a baritone saxophone are a typical big band saxophone section.
Mm-hmm.
So I would play the bass line, the bottom parts of harmonies, things like that. Um, as part of that, you also get exposed occasionally to other instruments. In a big band, you don't have a clarinet player. You've got a saxophone player who has a clarinet.
Mm-hmm.
The trumpets and the trombones always play trumpet and trombone. The reeds play everything.
Mm-hmm.
So in high school and in college, I learned, and when I say learned, I mean kind of learned to play clarinet, bass clarinet, contrabass clarinet, and flute as well. I am not good with those instruments, but I was good enough to learn and play the parts that I had to play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, this is your 13th question. You've almost made it.
Okay.
Now, just a quick question about pop music. Um, is there a song that when you kind of got into music that you wanted to learn how to play that was a pop music? It could be any era. Because there's always that like little hook for somebody. Like for me, I heard saw a band, high school band play Hogan's Heroes, the intro theme, and I was like, I want to be a drummer, but I have no rhythm. I have none, and you know that. So, Mark, if you could tell me what was a pop song that kind of like that you liked, any era, that kind of like, oh, this is cool to play. I'm so cool. I'm 12 years old and I'm playing this pop song what's that pop song?
All right. So it's not pop in the sense that it's. I mean, at some point it was popular, but it was
Sure.
never ever pop music. I have I have never listened to pop music. Um, I
I'm
don't.
using pop in a very general sense, sort of like song we'd all know.
I have always listened to music that's about 20 to 30 years old.
Okay.
Um,
So right now you're in 1988.
yeah, I was a high school student in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I graduated in 1988, and I did not listen to that music at that point
Till last week.
till the last couple of years. Really, it's been. I am always about 20 or 30 years behind.
You know, hey, there's
Uh,
some good stuff coming up called grunge. Just hang in there.
yeah, there really isn't. I will skip Nirvana all over. Uh,
Okay. Just,
so part of that might be nostalgia.
sure.
Uh, Part of that might be it just takes a while to start to appreciate what was being done at that time,
Mm,
because at the time I was listening to it and going, "Wow, this really sucks."
mm,
Uh, so growing up, I was listening to big band swing and like 50s, 60s jazz, bebop,
mm-hmm.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm sure you were one of the coolest dudes in your high school.
no, not at all. I was the drum major.
Okay. I was.
Very, very opposite of cool. Um,
What? Wasn't everybody into 50s and 60s music in 1988?
yeah, no, not really.
That's weird. Anyway.
So I was obviously taking saxophone lessons. I always studied under really good jazz saxophonists who were majoring or getting their postdoc stuff at IU. Very, very good school of music. So I always had good teachers. And 15, maybe 16 years old, I was working with a guy, and he decided. I told him my biggest problem was ear training, and he said, "Hey, that's everybody's biggest problem. Don't worry about it. Let's start fixing it." And let's start fixing it basically comes down to, I'm going to give you some tapes to listen to, because it was still cassette tapes at the time.
Sure. It wasn't reel to reel.
No, no, it wasn't quite that old. But I'm going to give you some cassettes, and I want you to listen to them. And I want you to figure out how to play them.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, no problem. Who's your favorite saxophone player? And I named Charlie Parker. I don't know if you're acquainted with the music of Charlie Parker.
Somewhat, but I would have said Herb Alpert.
He's a trumpet player, but okay. You got a musician, great. Charlie
That's a half point.
basically famous for playing lots of really fast notes.
Yeah, sure.
So the very first piece of music that he gave me to learn was a song called Anthropology. And the melody is not that hard to get,
Mm-hmm.
but then I had to play his solo too.
Mm-hmm.
So lessons would consist of listening to the music and then him playing on the piano in the room the chord changes as I tried to play the melody and the solo.
Mm-hmm.
And it was brutally hard. At the time, I kind of knew that the key of A existed,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't play in it. No high school saxophone player wants to play in A, but I learned to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So that, and it was followed up by this one you'll know, Zoot Sims, Yakety Sax,
Mm-hmm. I've heard of that.
um, at the Benny Hill theme song. So I ended up learning that one too. I think I might still be able to play that.
Well, that would be very popular around my house. By the way,
So, so I guess
big
those
Benny Hill fan.
songs,
Big Benny Hill fan.
so I guess those songs were two of my early attempts to really just learn something on a horn instead of play the notes.
I see. I see. Did that open up your eyes to playing differently? How did that help you?
Uh, every every musical experience builds on every other musical experience, and that's not just saying it's only music. Everything that you do in any field builds on everything else that you do, right? Um, so it altered. Learning to listen to something changes the way you listen to all music ever again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'll still occasionally. I just bought a new car, and for the first time ever, it's got a really really good radio in it, and I'm listening to Sirius broadband,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm hearing songs that I've heard all over and over and over again, but I'm hearing them in a good system, and I was like, is what is that? What's going on back in there in that background?
Mm-hmm.
There's some sort of low rumble that I've never heard before, or hey, there's some guy playing a bell that is that I've never even noticed was there before.
Mm-hmm.
So learning to listen to music with the intent of understanding it helps you learn to count, helps rhythm make more sense, um, helps you understand harmonies. If you're trying to play both parts of something, it's easy to hear the melody. It's what everybody listens to, but it's really really hard sometimes to listen to what's being done underneath it.
True.
Because that's not where the star is.
Right. It's not the action.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. Well, guess that was an extra. There was a free bonus question for you. That was question 14. So there you go. You made it. You made it to the end. There you go. Congratulations. There are no prizes. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Well, you know.
As an
But
improviser, I'm not used to salary.
so, but now you get to that part where you get to ask me a question. It could be any question, anything you like. I hopefully be able to answer it. Hopefully, it'll be entertaining.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Um, so this came up as my thoughts are going on top of other things that you've been talking about so far.
Sure.
Um, the question appears to me, and it came from something I did as a kid. The learning these things, learning the saxophone parts. My teacher said, "Hey, you should be proud of yourself. You just did that."
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I was. And I mentioned, "Hey, I was drum major," and we both laughed about how that makes me cool. No, it doesn't. Um, the idea of accomplishments and pride. So, Francis, what are you proud of?
That's a very, very hard question for me to do because I never feel like I've ever accomplished anything. So, what am I most proud of? Yikes. I think that it's also I'm one of those people that if I look at a picture of myself, I can pull it apart and then I'll look at it like 10 years later and I'm like, oh, I wasn't as fat as I thought then, or I wasn't didn't look so bad, or that wasn't a bad shirt, whatever. So I'm not really good at doing that. I would think that I'm just gonna go with the first thing in my head at this point. It's funny because you might I think people have watched the show and you know this. I have a law degree and maybe that's I'm proud of that. But I didn't feel like I ever did as well in law school as I thought I should have. I don't think I ever felt like I worked hard enough. So I never felt like that was an achievement. I mean, I got through, I passed, and but I wasn't like on law review or anything like that. I think that this is the counter to this. I think that for me, and this is just so weird that I'm going to pick this, because if you ask me this another time, I'd probably answer differently. The fact that I wrote and sold a screenplay that was actually produced, and it's actually available on Tubi. It's so bad, though. It is so bad, and I look at it and I realize so many things that I learned about script writing through that experience. Because I'll be honest with you, 75% of what I wrote is on that. It's called Changing Seasons. That wasn't my title. My title was Holiday Hope.
That sounds like a Hallmark movie.
It was. Hallmark actually passed on it. It went to Lifetime and Hallmark, and it got read, and then it ended up in somebody else bought it because they get it. I was like, fine, but it was supposed. I wrote a Christmas movie, And so yeah, but it's now available on Tubi. It stars Dan Cortez. I don't know if you know who that is. He was on MTV, Rock and Jock. He also was on an episode of Seinfeld called The Mimbo, where I don't know if you remember that episode at all.
I have never watched an episode of Seinfeld.
Oh, okay. And then Victoria's Closet, he was a main character on that show with Kirstie Alley for, I think that lasted like 3 years. Anyway, so anyway, he started in, and then the country western Canadian country western star Beverly Mahood was the female. And so anyway, it yeah, so 75% of the dialogue is mine, I would say, and I am credited as the writer, and just going through that process was very interesting, and but seeing how people can take your words and then really take out any sort of text, any sort of context to it, was sort of is so that's negative, but I also learned a lot. I think as an act, I wrote it from an actor's point of view, so I left a lot of ability for somebody as an actor to like add to the work, and I think that's a big mistake. I think that's giving. I think I should have been much more direct about what was going on in the scene, and rather than leaving it up to an interpretation. And so I think I learned a lot from that. But I'm proud of that. I think is probably. And besides, and again, that's and now that I had a moment, I probably should say, being married to my wife, and being, having a daughter that I think is awesome, and those things are very important, and they are the most important things in my life. But when you're talking about a personal achievement, that would be where I would be, or have doing a jury trial would also be up there too. But those aren't as, like I said, those aren't sort of my goals. I think of any of my goals, writing a screenplay that actually got produced was closer to them. So, I don't know. I hope that answers your question. I don't know. I don't think in those. I don't think in it's because I don't feel like I've ever achieved. So that's a good question, but a hard question for me.
Does the idea that you have to be proud of something means that you have to have achieved it?
You know what? I mean, I think that's a good follow up too, because necessarily you don't. But I think I equate the two.
Achievements are like a checklist.
Sure.
I graduated from high school. Check. I graduated from college. Check. I
Right.
got a job. I got married. I had a kid. You're saying, look at me. I'm an adult because I've done all these things.
Right.
But I mean, pride is a slippery thing. On the
Sure.
one hand, it's you've probably told your daughter, be proud of what you've done.
Yeah.
And at the same time, pride is a seven deadly sin.
Right.
Don't be proud of yourself. You're going to hell for that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tough. And I think for me as a teacher, my professional accomplishments are somebody else's achievements.
Yeah, that's hard. That would be hard. I mean, I'm not a good teacher. I'm not, that's something that you have to have that innate ability. I think to
As an attorney,
yeah.
the idea that I am proud of the relationships, or I am proud of my impact on somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
What positive impacts?
See,
So getting a student to realize that they have the ability to learn something when they thought they didn't. Check.
mm-hmm.
Getting a student. I coached fencing. My own trophies and medals don't really mean that much to me, but sending a 16-year-old kid to a tournament and having a college coach come up to them and say, I'd like you to consider fencing at my school. Check. Sending a fencing student to Junior Olympics. Check. Though teaching my students improv,
Mm-hmm.
and having them tell me afterwards, I wrote better because of improv, or I acted better because of improv, or I'm going to keep doing this when I get into school. Those are the accomplishments. So as an attorney, have you helped people?
Yeah, I mean that's basically what the part of it that I enjoy. I mean that's as I was thinking as you were saying that, and I've said this before in so many ways, which is I enjoy helping people because I'm on the side of people being sued. I don't sue people. I defend people who are being sued essentially, and so helping people through a hard time, helping them through the system. I mean I do enjoy that scenario or that situation, helping people to basically let them know that this is this is a difficult situation, but we will get through it, and that I'm going to help you. So yeah, that I do like, and I do appreciate. It's the one aspect of being a lawyer I do like. I don't do it for the money. I don't. That doesn't motivate me. I mean, it does motivate me that I'd like to make sure I have a roof over my head. Absolutely, but I don't do it to. I'm not. I'm not. Joe lawyer hawking my personal injury practice on a commercial. So
You want to name names and see if you can get sued for them?
right, right. And no, where I get my enjoyment out of being a lawyer is helping people, is help, and whether it's helping whether it's somebody being sued, somebody who works for a company that's being sued, helping them navigate the system. So like, hey, this is what's going on. This is what we're gonna do. And so it's sort of this, yeah. So that's where I do enjoy it, and it comes down to, how you are with people, because that is really what we are about. I think that answers. I think that, but but like you said, I do look at it like, what did I achieve, looking at for what I want to do, and when I do help other people, I do enjoy it. But I don't look at it as a singular achievement. I just look at it as, this is what I enjoy about this. This is what I do in the aspect of my job that I enjoy. I don't know if that makes any sense whatsoever.
I think you can go ahead and be proud of those things.
Oh, sure. Thank you. You know what? I don't have to. Now, you know what? I'm just going to come see you for my weekly counseling meeting.
Oh, I'd love to make therapy money.
There you go. There you go. So anyway, so there you did it. That was I think that was my question. I hope I answered that okay. And so that's the episode. Marc, hey, I appreciate you doing this. We'll have you on again. I'm trying to, get through some of my comedy friends. As I don't know if people realize that are listening to this, we do perform together, but we haven't been performing. We're actually not performing anything together right now. Maybe you'll do something with Nelson's and In Productions, The Grid. Hopefully you'll appear on that. I know you do watch the show. Hopefully you'll do something with the show as a guest spot or something. That'd be very cool. And maybe we'll get back to the Tony Stanzas someday.
When we're able to get back together and sing safely, yes.
Yes, and so and once I can just safely sing.
What are you proud of?
What am I proud of? That I made it into a musical improv group and I can't sing.
You can sing.
I have no rhythm though. That's the problem.
You do have rhythm. It's just slightly off of everybody else's.
It's highly selective. It's highly selective. Anyway, so Marc, there you go. Thank you for being on the show. This was another fun and exciting episode of 13 and 1, the talk show that's like a game show, but there are no prizes. Sorry about that. Let's hear the outro music again. This is really low rent. We just played off my phone, but it's free. It's my music, so YouTube can't get mad. So again, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. I'd appreciate it. And Marc will have you on again soon. Thanks again. I appreciate it. Stand by there and have a good day, everybody. Hit the like button, send a comment.